First of all, welcome to another street-lit audiobook banger. Make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're from.
Chances, Chapter 1. The Call. Lawanda King stood naked in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of her West Hollywood penthouse, the lights of Los Angeles glittering below like a carpet of fallen stars. At 29, she had the kind of body that made strong men stupid and weak men dangerous. Deep mahogany skin glowed under the soft, recessed lighting. Full, heavy breasts with dark nipples that tightened in the cool air from the open balcony doors. A waist that dipped dramatically before flaring into hips, and an ass that could stop traffic on Sunset. Long legs that looked even longer when she wore the 6-inch heels she favored. She was not wearing heels now. Behind her, Marcus M.J. Jordan, 6'7" shooting guard for the Lakers, body carved from marble and bad decisions, lay sprawled across her king-size bed like a fallen tree. He was still breathing hard. The sheets were twisted around his thick thighs. One massive hand rested on his chest, the other still reaching toward the place where she had just been. "God damn, Lawanda," he muttered, voice thick with that post-nut haze. "You trying to kill a nigga or what?" She smiled without turning around. The smile didn't reach her eyes. "You came back for more," she said, voice low and smooth like aged bourbon. "That's on you, baby." She could still feel him inside her, the stretch, the heat, the way he had gripped her hips hard enough to leave marks while she rode him like she owned the clock, which, in this moment, she did. Her phone vibrated on the marble nightstand. Once, twice, then a third time in quick succession. Lawanda's shoulders tightened almost imperceptibly. She crossed the room, hips swaying with that natural roll that no amount of Pilates could fake. She picked up the phone. The screen lit up with a name she hadn't seen in 3 months. Big T. Her stomach dropped. She answered on the 4th ring, voice cool. "Talk to me, Lawanda." Big T's voice was gravel and smoke, the same voice that had told her bedtime stories about how her daddy had taken his first life at 17. "You need to come home. Now." She didn't ask what happened. She never asked stupid questions. "How bad?" "Vic's alive. Grazed. 2 of the boys ain't so lucky. Happened outside the site on Moreland. Somebody knew where he was gonna be." Lawanda closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, the playful woman who had just fucked an NBA player into temporary paralysis was gone. In her place stood Victor King's only daughter. Who? We don't know yet, but the vulture's already circling. Little Vic talking reckless. Some of the old heads looking for somebody to follow. Your daddy's in Emory, but he's asking for you. She was already moving. "I'll be there in 4 hours. Private terminal at Burbank. Jets fueled. I already called." Of course he had. Lawanda ended the call and stood very still for 3 heartbeats. Then she turned to Marcus. He was sitting up now, sheet pulled around his waist, watching her with the wary respect of a man who had just realized the woman he was fucking might be more dangerous than he was. "Business?" he asked. "Family." He nodded slowly. "You need me to do anything?" She almost laughed. What could a 24-year-old baller with endorsement deals and a good jump shot do in her world? "Just forget you saw me tonight," she said, already pulling a silk robe off the back of a chair. "And if anybody asks, we had dinner and I went home early, alone." Marcus Jordan was many things, but he wasn't stupid. He recognized an order when he heard one. "Be safe, Lawanda." She gave him a real smile this time, small and sharp. Safe is for people who don't have empires to protect. 40 minutes later, she was on the tarmac at Bob Hope Airport, the family's Gulfstream G550 already idling like a sleek Black Panther. The pilot, an old family friend who had flown her father for 20 years, nodded once as she climbed the stairs in black slacks, a cream silk blouse unbuttoned just enough to suggest, but not reveal, and a tailored blazer that cost more than most people's rent. Inside, the cabin smelled of leather and money. She dropped into the cream leather seat and accepted the glass of Krug the attendant poured without being asked. As the jet climbed into the night sky, Lawanda stared out at the city she had escaped to 3 years ago. Los Angeles had been good to her. The talent management company she ran out of a discreet office in Beverly Hills was legitimate enough on paper. Models, influencers, a few rising actors. The real money came from the private client list. High-end companionship for men who needed discretion and women who wanted to get paid without walking a track. The laundering was clean. The connections were better. But Atlanta was in her blood. She could already feel the humidity even though she was 30,000 feet up, could already hear the low hum of bass from a strip club on a Tuesday night, could already smell the mix of red clay, car exhaust, and fried chicken that was the city's true perfume. Her father had built it all. Victor Vic King hadn't come from money. He came from the projects off Bankhead, ran numbers as a teenager, moved weight in the 80s when crack turned Atlanta into a gold rush, then smartened up. Construction companies that won city contracts nobody else could touch, nightclubs that laundered money and gathered information, political donations that bought protection, a gentleman's club called the Velvet Rope that was more powerful than half the boardrooms downtown, and now somebody had tried to take it from him. Lawanda took a slow sip of champagne and let the bubbles burn her tongue. She had always known this day would come. Vic had 2 sons, both dead or locked up, and 1 daughter. The daughter had been the smartest one, the one he had taken to meetings when she was 15 and told her to watch and learn, the one he had taught to shoot, to negotiate, to read a room, to use her body like a weapon and her mind like a blade. Most men in the game still thought women were for fucking or for show. They were about to learn different. The jet hit a patch of turbulence. Lawanda didn't flinch. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Big T. They hit the club too. Velvet Rope got shot up. No customers hurt, but message received. She typed back 1 word, understood. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the files she kept encrypted. Construction bids, club revenue reports, the names of every politician on the take, the routes the product moved through the airport and the port. She had been preparing for this without even realizing it. By the time the plane began its descent toward Atlanta, Lawanda King had already decided 3 things. 1, her father was going to live. 2, whoever had tried to kill him was going to die. 3, when the smoke cleared, Atlanta would have a new king, and her name would be Lawanda. The wheels touched down at a private airfield just south of the city. The air that rushed in when the door opened was thick and warm, carrying the scent of rain and red Georgia clay. Lawanda stepped out onto the tarmac in her heels, blazer draped over 1 arm, silk blouse clinging to her skin in the humidity. A black Escalade waited 20 feet away, engine running, tinted windows up. Big T stood beside it, 6'4", 300 pounds of muscle and loyalty, his bald head gleaming under the lights. He opened the back door for her without a word. As she slid inside, he spoke low. "Welcome home, Princess." Lawanda looked out at the dark Atlanta skyline in the distance, the city she had left but never really escaped. "Not a princess anymore, T," she said quietly. Her eyes were hard. "I'm here to be queen." Chapter 2. The King of Atlanta. The Emory University Hospital private wing smelled like money and antiseptic. Lawanda's heels clicked against the polished floors as she moved past 2 stone-faced security men Big T had posted at the door. Inside the dimly lit room, Victor King lay propped up against pillows, an IV dripping into his arm, a white bandage visible under the open hospital gown across his shoulder. He looked smaller than she remembered, but his eyes, those cold, calculating brown eyes that had stared down mayors and killers alike, were still sharp as ever. Lawanda, he rasped, the corner of his mouth twitching into something like a smile. Took you long enough, girl? She crossed to the bed and kissed his forehead, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with hospital sterility. I was busy building my own little empire in LA. You know how it is? Vic chuckled, then winced. Always was too much like me. A nurse hovered nervously until Big T gave her a look that sent her scurrying out. Alone with her father, Lawanda pulled up a chair and took his hand. The city outside the window was dark, power still spotty in places after the storm warnings. Atlanta felt like it was holding its breath. Tell me what happened, she said quietly. Vic stared at the ceiling for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried her back through decades. It started in the projects off Bankhead in 1985. 1985. Victor King was 22 years old, lean and hungry, with a reputation that already made older hustlers take notice. Atlanta was booming in some ways, the black middle class growing, the music scene starting to bubble. But for boys like Vic, it was still a concrete jungle where the strong ate the weak. He had started small, running numbers for an old Italian who still had fingers in the game from the 70s. Then crack hit like a hurricane. Suddenly, everybody wanted product, and Vic saw the chance. He didn't just sell it, he organized it. By 24, he had a crew of 10 loyal young brothers moving weight from the airport through the neighborhoods. He paid his people well, punished betrayal brutally, and kept his mouth shut around the wrong ears. But real power wasn't in the streets. It was in the buildings going up all over the city. The 1996 Olympics were coming. Atlanta was about to get a facelift, and Vic intended to own a piece of the new face. He met Marcus Heavy Williams at a dice game in a back room off Auburn Avenue. Heavy ran a small construction crew that specialized in getting shit done, meaning they knew how to make unions cooperate and inspectors look the other way. Their first deal was simple. Vic supplied protection and capital. Heavy supplied the bids and the labor. Within 2 years, they had legitimate contracts pouring in. Vic laundered drug money through the construction companies, then through the nightclubs he started buying. The first one was a hole in the wall on Peachtree that he turned into the Velvet Rope. Velvet seating, beautiful black women dancing like they were born for it, private rooms where politicians and ballers made deals that never saw daylight. Women loved Vic. He was tall, smooth-skinned, with a smile that could charm the panties off a preacher's wife and a ruthlessness that kept them coming back. His first serious woman was Lawanda's mother, Denise, a gorgeous dancer from the clubs who had fire in her eyes and ambition to match his. She gave him a daughter in 1991 and told him straight, "This one's gonna run circles around you, Vic." He believed her. By the late 90s, Vic King wasn't just surviving the game. He was rewriting the rules. When rival crews tried to move in on his territory during the post-Olympics slowdown, he handled it quietly. Bodies disappeared into new foundations. Politicians who took his money delivered zoning changes and favorable contracts. He bought a sprawling estate in Buckhead that looked like something out of a magazine. Marble floors, a pool that glowed turquoise at night, a home theater where he watched Scarface on repeat while counting money. Lawanda grew up watching it all. She remembered sitting on her father's knee at age 8 while he took meetings in the study. "Watch their eyes, baby girl," he'd whisper. "Words lie. Eyes tell the truth." At 13, he took her to the club after hours and let her watch the girls rehearse. "Beauty is power," he told her. "But brains and beauty together, that's unstoppable." By 15, she could negotiate a deal, fire a gun, and seduce information out of a man twice her age without giving away more than a smile. Then Denise got sick, cancer, gone in 18 months. Something hardened in Vic after that. He pushed Lawanda harder, sent her to the best schools. made her watch every move. When she turned 18 and asked to go to college up north, he let her, but reminded her the empire would always call her home. Back in the hospital room, 2020, Vic squeezed his daughter's hand, bringing her back to the present. "I built it for us," he said hoarsely. "Not for them." He jerked his chin toward the door, meaning the lieutenants and cousins waiting outside. "Little Vic thinks because he's got my name, he's got my throne. He's hot-headed, good with a gun, bad with thinking. The others, they see weakness now. That storm coming, it's going to be our chance to remind them who runs this city." Lawanda nodded slowly. Outside, thunder rumbled again. The news had been full of it. Tropical storm remnants threatening more outages. The city already on edge from the summer's unrest. Perfect cover for moving product, settling scores, and shifting power. "Who ordered the hit, Daddy?" she asked. Vic's eyes narrowed. "I got my suspicions. Darius Washington and his crew been sniffing around the construction bids on the new development out west. They think with all the noise downtown last summer, the old rules don't apply anymore. Young boys with new money and no respect. Darius D. Washington." She had heard the name in L.A., a rising player with ties to some out-of-town interests, flashy, ambitious, and apparently stupid enough to go after Vic King. "I'll handle it," Lawanda said simply. Vic studied her for a long moment. The pain meds were making him drift, but his pride was clear. "You always were my favorite, you know that? Your brothers, they wanted the life. You understood the business. Go see the clubs, talk to the captains, remind them the King family ain't dead yet." And Lawanda, she waited. "Don't trust nobody but Big T, and don't hesitate. This world don't love nobody who hesitates." She leaned in and kissed his cheek again. "I learned from the best." As she stood to leave, Vic's voice followed her to the door. "Make 'em remember why they called me king." Lawanda stepped out into the hallway where Big T was waiting like a mountain. "Take me to the house first," she told him. Then we hit the streets. The Escalade rolled through Buckhead's tree-lined streets, past mansions with gates and luxury cars. The King estate sat on 5 acres, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone that Vic had built after Denise died. Lawanda walked through the familiar foyer, her fingers trailing over the grand piano her mother used to play. Memories flooded her again. She remembered being 16, sneaking into one of the private rooms at the Velvet Rope with a boy from school. He had been nervous. She had been curious. That night she learned how power felt when you wielded it with your body. The way a man would give up secrets between gasps and moans if you knew how to move. She had reported back to her father the next day about the boy's father's business dealings. Vic had laughed and given her a diamond tennis bracelet. That was the life. Upstairs in her old suite, she changed into something more Atlanta, a tight black jumpsuit that hugged every curve, gold chains that caught the light, and Louboutins that said she wasn't playing. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror. The girl who had left was gone. The woman who returned was ready. Big T drove her to the Velvet Rope next. Even with the city jittery from storm warnings, the parking lot was full. Music thumped through the walls, that Atlanta bass that made bodies move and deals happen. Inside, the lights were low, bodies grinding on the floor, girls on stage moving like liquid sin. The manager spotted her immediately and straightened up. "Miss King," he said, voice respectful. "Didn't know you were coming." "Neither did I," she replied coolly. "But here I am. Office. Now. And bring the books." What followed was 3 hours of numbers, whispers, and subtle power displays. Some of the captains were happy to see her. Others shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting. She could smell the ambition and fear. One lieutenant, a slick talker named Smooth, tried to test her. "With all due respect, Lawanda, some of the boys think we need a strong hand right now. Vic's down." She cut him off with a smile that wasn't a smile. My father is the strong hand. I'm the mind that directs it. You got a problem with that, Smooth? He swallowed. No, ma'am. Good, because the first person who steps out of line while my father recovers, well, let's just say the foundations we pour next will have company. By the time she left the club, the message had spread. Lawanda King was back, and she wasn't here to play princess. As the Escalade pulled away into the night, another text came through on her burner. Unknown number. Welcome home, Lawanda. We should talk. D. She stared at the screen, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. Darius Washington wanted to talk. Perfect. The storm was coming, and in the darkness, Lawanda King was going to rewrite the rules of Atlanta, just like her father had done before her. Chapter 3. Return of the Princess. The King estate in Buckhead sat like a jewel against the stormy Atlanta night. Floodlights illuminated the manicured grounds, the infinity pool glowing turquoise even as thunder rolled in the distance. Lawanda stepped out of the Escalade and let the humid air wrap around her like an old lover. This house held every version of her: the wide-eyed girl, the rebellious teenager, the woman who had learned that love was a transaction and power was the only currency that mattered. Big T lingered by the car. You want me inside? I got it, she said, but stay close. I don't trust the quiet tonight. Inside, the marble foyer echoed with her heels. A housekeeper she didn't recognize scurried away after one look at her face. Lawanda moved through the rooms like she owned them, because she did or would soon. In the great room, her half-brother Little Vic was sprawled on a leather sectional, a bottle of Hennessy in one hand and a half-naked girl in his lap. He was 25, built like their father, but softer in the eyes, quicker to anger. He looked up and grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. Well, the prodigal daughter returns. Heard you been living fancy in L.A., playing manager to ballers and rappers? Lawanda didn't smile. And I heard you've been playing gangster while Daddy was trying to run an empire. How's that working out for you? The girl on his lap shifted uncomfortably. Little Vic waved her away like she was nothing. She grabbed her clothes and disappeared upstairs. You think you can just fly in and take over? He asked, standing up. He was tall, but Lawanda had presence that made rooms shrink. I've been here holding shit down. The captains know me. They know you're hot-headed and sloppy, she replied coolly, pouring herself a drink from the crystal decanter. The whiskey burned smooth. 2 of our people are dead because somebody knew exactly where Daddy would be. You got any ideas about that, brother? Little Vic's jaw tightened. Don't come at me like that. I'm the one who's been in the trenches. And I'm the one Daddy taught the game to, Lawanda said, stepping closer. She could smell the liquor on him. You want to fight me for the crown, little brother, or you want to get in line and help me bury the motherfuckers who came after our family? For a second, something like respect flickered in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by resentment. We'll see what the old heads say. She sipped her drink. They'll say what I tell them to say. Upstairs, Lawanda found her old bedroom untouched. The king bed, the walk-in closet still full of designer pieces from years ago, the vanity where she used to practice the perfect cat-eye while listening to her father's stories. She stripped out of the jumpsuit and stood under the shower, letting hot water cascade over her body. Her mind raced. She thought of her mother, Denise, the original queen, beautiful, fierce, gone too soon. Denise had taught her how to use beauty as both shield and sword. Men see the body first, she used to say, oiling Lawanda's skin after dance practice. But the ones who last see the mind make them want both. Lawanda had taken those lessons to heart. In L.A., she had slept with powerful men and women, not just for pleasure, though the pleasure was real, but for leverage. Secrets whispered in silk sheets were worth more than gold. She stepped out of the shower, water beading on her deep brown skin, and lotioned slowly, taking her time. The mirror showed a woman ready for war, full breasts, narrow waist, hips that swayed with purpose, ass that made men lose focus. She chose a silk robe that clung in all the right places and went downstairs. Big T was waiting in the study with a laptop. Books look clean on the surface, but there's some funny money in the construction side. And Darius sent another message, wants a sit down tomorrow night at neutral ground. Lawanda's lips curved. Tell him yes, but we choose the place. The velvet rope. After hours. She spent the next 2 hours going through files. Real estate developments that were fronts for laundering, club revenues that hid the flow from product moving through Hartsfield-Jackson, political connections that stretched from City Hall to the state capitol. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing the windows, mirroring the chaos she felt building inside the family. Her phone buzzed, a text from an old flame, Khalil, one of the club's former head of security, now running his own security firm that did work for the family. Heard you back. Need anything? Old times? She smiled and typed back, maybe. Come by the house in an hour. Some tensions needed release before the real work began. Khalil arrived exactly on time, looking as good as she remembered. Tall, dark-skinned, with tattoos peeking from his collar and a body honed by years of street work and the gym. He stepped into the foyer and pulled her into a kiss without a word. It was hungry, familiar. His hand slid down her silk robe, cupping her ass as he backed her against the wall. Damn, Lawanda, he murmured against her neck. You still feel like trouble. She laughed low in her throat and pushed him toward the stairs. I am trouble, and right now I need to forget for a little while. In her bedroom, clothes came off in a rush. Khalil's mouth was everywhere. On her throat, her breasts lower. Lawanda arched into him, fingers digging into his shoulders as he dropped to his knees. He knew exactly what she liked. Tongue working with precision until she was gasping, thighs trembling around his head. When she came, it was sharp and satisfying, a release of the day's tension. She pulled him up and onto the bed, straddling him, taking control the way she always did, riding him slow, then fast, her body moving like the dancers at the club, hips rolling in that deadly rhythm. Khalil gripped her waist, cursing under his breath as she took what she needed. The storm outside masked their sounds. When he finally shuddered beneath her, she collapsed against his chest, both of them breathing hard. For a few minutes, there was only the rain and their heartbeats. Then reality returned. You staying in the game? He asked quietly, tracing a finger down her spine. I never left it, she said. Daddy's hurt. Somebody tried to kill him. I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again and to take what's ours. Khalil nodded. He had always understood her. You need muscle, eyes, whatever. I'm yours. But watch little Vic. He's been talking big lately. Thinks the crown fits him better. I know. She kissed him once more, slow and deep, then rolled off. Get dressed. We've got work. The next morning, Lawanda was back at the hospital. Vic was sitting up more, color returning to his face. Big T and 2 other trusted men stood guard. She told him about the books, the meeting with Darius, the tensions with little Vic. Vic listened, pride mixing with pain in his eyes. You remind me of your mother, he said. She would have burned the city down to protect this family. But you'll build it bigger. Just be careful, baby girl. Darius ain't the only snake. The Fed's been sniffing around since the summer protests. Everybody looking for weakness. Lawanda squeezed his hand. Then we give them strength. My strength. She left the hospital feeling the full weight of the empire on her shoulders. In the car, she made calls. Captains to meet at the club, lawyers to shore up the legitimate side, a contact in the mayor's office to make sure the storm cleanup contract stayed in family hands. Back at the estate, little Vic was waiting with 2 cousins. The conversation was tense, voices raised, old resentments bubbling up. Lawanda shut it down with a single look and a few sharp words that reminded them exactly whose blood ran in her veins. By evening, as the storm finally began to ease, she stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights. Atlanta stretched out below her, Buckhead's mansions, downtown skyscrapers, the neighborhoods where her father had built his legend. This was her city now. She felt the power humming through her veins, mixed with the afterglow of last night and the fire of ambition. Whoever had come after her father had made the biggest mistake of their lives. Lawanda King was home, and the game was about to change. Chapter 4. The Velvet Rope. The velvet rope pulsed like a living heartbeat in the heart of Atlanta's nightlife district, even with the city still licking its wounds from the latest round of storms and the lingering tension from summer's unrest. The line wrapped around the block. Valet attendants in crisp black uniforms moved luxury cars with practiced efficiency. Inside, the bass thumped low and dirty, that signature Atlanta sound that made hips sway and secrets spill. Lawanda arrived at midnight, stepping out of the blacked-out Escalade like she owned the night. She wore a blood-red dress that clung to every curve, plunging neckline showing just enough to command attention without begging for it. Her hair fell in sleek waves down her back, gold hoops catching the lights, red bottom heels clicking with purpose. Big T and two other men flanked her as she bypassed the line entirely. The doorman, an old soldier who had been with the family for years, nodded deeply. "Miss King, good to have you back." The club hit her like a wave, dim red lighting, mirrored walls, the scent of expensive perfume, cigar smoke, and desire. On the main stage, two dancers moved in perfect sync, bodies glistening under the spotlights. Private booths lined the walls where deals were made over bottles of champagne that cost more than most people's monthly rent. In the VIP section, a city councilman was laughing too loud with a group of young athletes. Lawanda noted every face. The manager, a sharp-dressed man named Rico, met her at the bar. "Everything's ready in the back office, Miss King, but we got some visitors tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "Uninvited?" "More like testing the waters, couple of Darius's boys in the VIP, spending heavy, watching everything." Lawanda smiled, slow and dangerous. "Good. Let them watch." She moved through the club like royalty returning from exile. Girls on stage recognized her and amped up their routines. Regular patrons whispered behind their glasses. She stopped at a few tables, greeting key players. A real estate developer who owed the family favors. A music executive whose artists shot videos at family-owned warehouses. Each conversation was short, loaded, reinforcing that the King name still carried weight. In the VIP, Darius's men stiffened when she approached. Two of them, young, flashy, chains gleaming, tried to play it cool. "Lawanda King," one said, raising his glass. "Heard you was back. D sends his regards. Says he's looking forward to that sit-down." "Tell him the terms are simple," she replied, voice silky but edged. "He shows up alone or with one man, no games. And if I find out his crew had anything to do with what happened to my father..." She let the threat hang, her eyes locking onto his until he looked away first. Satisfied, she continued her tour. The dressing rooms backstage were a different world. Laughter, perfume, the camaraderie of women who understood survival. She spoke to a few of the dancers, old friends from her teenage years hanging around the club. One, a stunning woman named Jasmine with caramel skin and legs for days, pulled her into a quick hug. "Girl, you look like money," Jasmine said. "Heard about Vic. You holding it down?" "Always," Lawanda replied. "Anybody bothering y'all here?" Jasmine shook her head. "Not since you walked in. But word travels. Some of these new crews think they can play without paying respect." Lawanda made a mental note. Respect would be enforced. Later, in the private owner's lounge behind the main floor, the real business happened. Captains and lieutenants gathered, some loyal, some skeptical. Lawanda stood at the head of the table, the red dress a power statement under the low lights. She laid out the situation without sugarcoating. Her father's recovery, the need for unity, the construction contracts they couldn't afford to lose, the product flow that kept the money coming in, and the threat from Darius Washington. One older captain, a man who had worked with Vic since the 90s, spoke up. With all respect, Lawanda, this is a man's game. You been gone a minute? The room tensed. Big T shifted, hand near his waist. Lawanda didn't flinch. Instead, she walked around the table slowly, stopping in front of him. This game was built on my father's vision. I was in the room learning it while some of you were still running errands. You think because I have tits and a pretty face, I can't pull the trigger or close a deal? Try me. The captain held her gaze for a long beat, then nodded. Point taken. One by one, they fell in line. She assigned tasks, tightening security at all family spots, doubling down on collections, preparing for the meeting with Darius. Money flowed that night. Envelopes changed hands. Promises were made. As the meeting broke up, the energy in the club shifted. Lawanda felt the eyes on her, the mix of desire and fear. It was intoxicating. She was nursing a glass of champagne at the private bar when Khalil appeared again. He had changed into a tailored black shirt that hugged his chest. Their eyes met across the room, and the heat from the previous night flared instantly. He joined her, standing close enough that his thigh brushed hers. Business looks good. Business is about to get better, she murmured. Her hand found his under the bar, fingers tracing up his arm. But right now, I need a different kind of release. They slipped into one of the ultra-private suites upstairs, soundproofed velvet everything, a mirrored ceiling that reflected every move. The door barely closed before Khalil had her against it, kissing her hard. Lawanda moaned into his mouth, hands working his belt open. He lifted her onto the plush chaise, dress hiked up around her waist, no underwear. His mouth found her again, tongue skilled and relentless, until she was gripping his head, riding his face with shameless need. When she came, loud and unfiltered, he didn't stop until she was shaking. Then she took over, pushed him back, straddled him, sinking down onto his hard length in one smooth motion. The mirrors above showed everything. Her body moving, breasts bouncing under the red fabric, his hands gripping her ass as she rode him with the same intensity she brought to every negotiation. Sweat glistened on their skin. The bass from the club below vibrated through the walls, matching their rhythm. "Fuck Lawanda," Khalil groaned, thrusting up to meet her. "You're gonna be the death of me." She leaned down, biting his lip. "Only if you cross me." They came together in a rush of heat and power, bodies locked, the city's underworld queen claiming one more piece of control. Afterward, they lay tangled in the velvet, catching their breath. Khalil traced patterns on her thigh. "You really doing this? Taking it all?" "Every inch," she said softly. "Atlanta doesn't know what's coming." Dawn was breaking by the time she left the club. The storm had passed, leaving the streets wet and shining. Lawanda slid into the back of the Escalade, dressed slightly rumpled, lipstick perfect, mind sharper than ever. Big T glanced in the rear view. "Everything good?" "Better than good," she said. "Tomorrow we meet Darius, and after that, we remind the whole city who the Kings really are." As the car pulled away, Lawanda looked back at the velvet rope, her father's crown jewel, soon to be hers. The princess had returned, and she was ready to rule. Chapter 5. The Blackout. The storm hit Atlanta like Judgment Day. Meteorologists had warned about the remnants of a tropical system, but nobody expected the fury that rolled in just after midnight. Winds howled through Buckhead's trees, snapping branches like twigs. Rain came sideways, flooding streets and turning interstates into rivers. Then the lights started going out. Block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, transformers exploded in bright blue flashes. The city plunged into darkness. Lawanda stood on the balcony of the King estate, silk robe whipping in the wind, watching the skyline go black. Her phone had been blowing up for hours. Club generators were holding at the velvet rope, but other family spots were vulnerable. Rivals would see this as opportunity, so would she. Perfect timing, she whispered to the storm. Big T appeared behind her, flashlight in hand. Power's out across most of the metro. Cell towers spotty. Little Vic wants to move on that warehouse Darius's crew uses on the south side. Says it's the perfect cover. Lawanda turned, eyes gleaming in the lightning flashes. Tell him to stand down. We do this my way. Gather the best men. We're going out in it. Chaos suited the underworld. With traffic lights dead and police stretched thin handling accidents and looters, the streets belonged to those who knew how to move in the dark. Lawanda rode in an armored Suburban with tinted windows and reinforced tires. Big T driving, two armed men in the back. Her red dress from the club had been traded for black tactical gear that still managed to hug her figure. Form-fitting pants, a fitted top under a vest, hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. She carried a Glock in a thigh holster, and the kind of calm that came from years of watching her father turn disasters into dividends. Their first stop was one of the family's construction sites on the west side. Generators hummed, keeping security lights on, but the surrounding blocks were pitch black. Lawanda walked the site like she owned it. Workers and guards nodded respectfully as she passed. Double the watch, she ordered the site manager. Anybody sniffing around, you call it in. And get those bids ready for the city cleanup contracts. We're taking lead on the storm recovery work downtown. The manager grinned. Already on it, Miss King. Next came the real move. Word had come through a trusted contact, one of Darius Washington's key stash houses, a nondescript warehouse used for cutting and packaging product, had lost power. No backup generators. Guards were jumpy. Lawanda made the call from the moving truck. We hit it quiet. Take what we can carry. Leave a message. No bodies unless they force it. The operation was surgical. They approached on foot through flooded alleys, rain soaking them to the bone. Big T took point. Lawanda moved with surprising grace for a woman in heels earlier that night, her senses sharp. When they breached the side door, the guards inside were arguing by flashlight. It was over in minutes. Non-lethal force mostly. Zip ties, guns to heads, threats delivered in low voices. Lawanda herself stepped into the main room, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating bricks of product stacked on tables. Tell Darius the King send their regards, she said to the head guard, pressing her gun under his chin. Next time, it won't be a warning. They loaded 2 vans with enough product to send a message worth hundreds of thousands. As they pulled away, Lawanda ordered a small fire set in a contained area, enough to destroy what they couldn't take and make sure the insurance claim would raise questions. The city stayed dark as they moved on. In the blackout, other opportunities appeared. A rival crew trying to loot one of the family's smaller clubs got deterred by armed men who appeared like ghosts. A politician who had been slow to deliver on a favor suddenly became very cooperative when Lawanda's people escorted him to a safe location for a conversation. By 4 a.m., Lawanda was back at the estate, wet, wired, and victorious. Power was still out, but the mansion's generators kept the essentials running. She showered quickly in candlelight, water streaming over her curves, washing away the night's grime and adrenaline. Khalil was waiting in her bedroom when she emerged, towel barely wrapped around her. "Heard what you did," he said, voice low. Bold. Necessary. She dropped the towel. He crossed the room in 2 strides, hands on her damp skin, mouth claiming hers. The blackout made everything feel more urgent, more primal. No lights, just touch and sound and the storm still raging outside. He took her against the window, her back to the cool glass overlooking the dark city, legs wrapped around his waist as he drove into her. Lawanda moaned freely, nails raking his back. the danger of the night fueling her hunger. They moved together in the shadows, raw, powerful, two survivors claiming pleasure in the middle of war. When it was over, they lay on the bed listening to the rain. "You're really stepping into his shoes," Khalil said, tracing her hip. "I'm making them my own," she replied. Morning brought flickering power back to some areas, but much of Atlanta remained in the dark. News reports talked about outages affecting hundreds of thousands, looting in certain neighborhoods, heroic first responders. Lawanda smiled at the coverage. Her people had already started positioning for the cleanup money. At the hospital, Vic was alert and impressed when she briefed him. "You moved on the warehouse?" he asked, pride thick in his voice. "Sent a clear message," she confirmed. "Product secured, their operation disrupted. Darius will be pissed. The sit-down tonight just got more interesting." Vic gripped her hand. "Don't underestimate him. He's young and hungry like I was, but you got something he doesn't, my blood and your mother's fire." Little Vic was waiting when she left the room, arms crossed. "You went without me." "I went with who I trust to get it done clean," she shot back. "You want in? Prove you can follow orders as well as give them." Tension crackled between them, but he backed down, for now. The rest of the day was strategy. Meetings by generator light, calls to connections whose power had been restored. Preparations for the evening sit-down at the Velvet Rope. Lawanda changed into another power look. Black leather pants, a silk blouse that hinted at the body beneath, heels sharp enough to kill. As evening fell and the city remained patchy with light and shadow, she felt the shift. The blackout wasn't just weather, it was her moment. Opportunities born in darkness. Darius Washington would learn that tonight. Lawanda King was no longer the princess waiting in the wings. She was the storm. Chapter 6. Dangerous Bedfellows. The sit-down with Darius Washington happened under the red glow of the Velvet Rope's emergency lights. Generators hummed in the background, keeping the VIP lounge alive while most of the city still wrestled with rolling blackouts. Lawanda sat at the head of the polished table like a queen holding court, legs crossed, black leather pants gleaming. Darius arrived with one bodyguard, just as agreed, cocky, sharply dressed in a designer suit, gold flashing at his neck and wrists. He was handsome in a dangerous way, with smooth, dark skin, a trimmed beard, and eyes that assessed her like she was both prize and threat. "Lawanda King in the flesh," he said, taking the seat across from her. His smile was all teeth. "Heard you been busy during the storm. My warehouse says hello." She didn't smile back. "Consider it a down payment on what you owe for coming after my father." Darius laughed, low and smooth. "Nobody proved that was me. Could have been any number of hungry crews. Atlanta's changing, beautiful. Old kings fall, new ones rise." The negotiation was tense, but civil on the surface. Territory lines, percentages on certain routes, respect for the king name. Underneath, it was pure power chess. Big T and Darius's man watched each other like wolves. By the end, a fragile truce was struck. For now. As Darius stood to leave, he paused, eyes lingering on her curves. "You know, we don't have to be enemies. A woman like you, we could build something unstoppable together. Mix the families, rule this city proper." Lawanda rose slowly, stepping close enough that her perfume wrapped around him. "Careful, Darius, I don't mix, I conquer." His eyes darkened with interest. "We'll see." He left, but the tension he stirred didn't. Later that night, the risk called to her. Khalil had been waiting at the estate, but Lawanda's mind was buzzing with the meeting. Power made her hungry in every way. She texted him to meet her at a discreet Buckhead penthouse the family kept for private matters. Neutral ground, luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the partially lit city. He arrived in under 20 minutes. The moment the door closed, the dam broke. Khalil pushed her against the wall, mouth crashing into hers with the kind of urgency that came from knowing every touch could be the last in their world. His hands were rough but knowing, sliding under her blouse, palming her full breasts, thumbs circling dark nipples until they hardened. Lawanda gasped, arching into him, her own fingers working his shirt open, nails raking down his tattooed chest. "You're playing with fire meeting him like that," he growled against her throat, biting down just hard enough to mark. "And you're the one who's going to put it out," she shot back, shoving him toward the bedroom. The penthouse was all modern luxury, silk sheets on the king bed, city views, low lighting from the backup systems. They didn't make it to the bed at first. Khalil dropped to his knees right there on the plush rug, peeling her leather pants down her long legs. His mouth found her center, hot and insistent, tongue flicking with expert precision, while two thick fingers curled inside her. Lawanda's head fell back against the wall, one hand gripping his head, hips grinding shamelessly against his face as pleasure built fast and sharp. "Fuck, Khalil, just like that." She came hard, thighs clamping around his ears, a cry echoing through the empty space. He didn't give her time to recover. Standing, he lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her to the bed. He freed himself and thrust into her in one deep stroke, filling her completely. They moved together like they were made for this, raw, relentless, bodies slapping in the dim light. Lawanda rode the wave, flipping them so she was on top, hands planted on his chest as she rolled her hips in that deadly rhythm that drove men wild. Her breasts bounced with every movement. Khalil's hands gripped her ass, guiding her faster, cursing her name like a prayer. The risk made it hotter. Khalil wasn't just a lover. He knew too much, moved in the same dangerous circles, and his loyalty could be tested. That edge only made her want him more. When they finally shattered together, her clenching around him, his release deep inside, the city lights flickered back on in patches outside the window, as if applauding. They lay tangled afterward, sweat cooling on their skin. Khalil traced the curve of her waist. "Darius was watching you like he wants to own you." Lawanda laughed softly, dangerous. "He can want. Wanting isn't having. You know that better than anyone." He rolled her beneath him again, already hardening. "Then remind me who has you right now." They went slower the second time, exploratory, almost tender, but still laced with that underworld fire. Mouths everywhere. His tongue on her nipples, her hand stroking him back to full readiness. When he entered her again, it was deep and deliberate, eyes locked. Lawanda came twice more before he did, the kind of releases that left her boneless and clear-headed. Dangerous bedfellows indeed. The affair deepened over the next days as the city slowly recovered power. Lawanda balanced it with business, overseeing storm cleanup contracts that funneled money back into family accounts, meeting with captains to solidify loyalty, and keeping little Vic on a short leash. But nights belonged to passion and strategy. One evening, after a tense family dinner where little Vic pushed back again on her leadership, Lawanda went to Khalil's place, a sleek condo in a revitalized area the family had invested in. He greeted her with a bottle of champagne in hands that wasted no time. This time it was in the shower, water cascading over their bodies as he took her from behind, one hand between her legs, the other pinning her wrists above her head against the tile. The steam, the heat, the way he filled her while whispering exactly how he would protect her empire. It was addictive. Lawanda pushed back against him, meeting every thrust, her moans echoing off the walls. Afterward, wrapped in robes on his balcony, the conversation turned serious. "You know this can't stay hidden forever," Khalil said. "If little Vic or the captains find out how deep we are—" "They won't," she cut in. "Not until I decide it serves us. You're useful, Khalil, loyal. And you fuck like you mean it. That combination is rare." He pulled her onto his lap, hands sliding under the robe to cup her bare ass. And you? What do you feel? Lawanda kissed him, slow and deep, but her eyes stayed calculating. I feel power, and right now, you're part of it. Don't make me regret that. The risk was real. Darius was circling, sending flowers and veiled messages. Little Vic was whispering to captains. The feds were still sniffing from the summer fallout. Yet in Khalil's arms, Lawanda felt unstoppable. A woman claiming every pleasure and every advantage in a city that rewarded the bold. But pleasure like this always came with a price. And in the world of the kings, prices were paid in blood. Chapter 7. The Numbers. The King family's main offices occupied the top 2 floors of a discreet Buckhead high-rise that looked like legitimate real estate development on paper. With power fully restored across most of the city, Lawanda turned her attention to the lifeblood of any empire, the money. She spent 3 straight days buried in the numbers. Spreadsheets, ledgers, offshore accounts, construction invoices, club receipts. It was all there on multiple laptops and hard drives in the secure conference room. Big T stood guard at the door while she worked, sleeves rolled up, hair in a messy bun, glasses perched on her nose for the fine print. The silk blouses and power dresses gave way to comfortable but still sexy loungewear that let her focus. The surface looked clean, too clean. Construction contracts for storm damage were pouring in just as she had positioned. The Velvet Rope and the other clubs were generating strong cash flow, especially with the post-blackout crowd seeking escape. Product movement through the airport connections had recovered, but something felt off in the details. Lawanda cross-referenced everything, late-night calls to accountants who owed the family favors, quiet meetings with bookkeepers. By the end of day 2, she found it. Discrepancies in the Southside Construction Division. Money siphoned off in small but consistent amounts. Fake invoices. Payments to shell companies that led back to a familiar name. Smooth, the slick lieutenant who had questioned her in the club meeting. Betrayal. She didn't rage, she planned. On the 3rd night, Lawanda called a private meeting at the estate. Only a handful of top people, Big T, Khalil, kept at arm's length for this one. 2 other trusted captains, and Smooth himself. The dining room table was set with whiskey and cigars, but the atmosphere was ice cold. Smooth arrived smiling, gold chain gleaming, trying to play the loyal soldier. Numbers looking good, Lawanda? I told you I had the South Side locked down. She let him talk, let him pour himself a drink. Then she slid the printed spreadsheets across the table. Explain these, she said quietly. The room went dead silent. Smooth's smile faltered as he scanned the pages, the discrepancies, the shell companies, the trail that ended at his cousin's LLC. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered. Family stuff. I was gonna bring it to you. Lawanda stood slowly. The silk robe she wore over her lingerie whispered as she moved. She looked every inch the queen, beautiful, deadly, in control. You stole from my father while he was in a hospital bed, she said. Her voice never rose. It didn't need to. You thought because I'm a woman, I wouldn't see it, or that I wouldn't handle it. Big T and the others watched, faces stone. Smooth tried to stand. Big T's hand clamped on his shoulder, forcing him back down. I swear, Lawanda, it was just a little. She cut him off with a single look. Then she nodded to Big T. What followed was swift and merciless. No guns in the house, too messy. Smooth was escorted to a waiting car. Lawanda didn't watch the departure, but she knew the outcome. The message would be sent. Disloyalty would not be tolerated. The cousins' LLC would be absorbed back into the family. The money returned with interest. She felt no guilt. This was the game her father had taught her. Later, alone in the master suite, the adrenaline needed an outlet. Lawanda poured herself a glass of wine and called Khalil. He arrived within the hour, sensing her mood. He found her on the chaise by the window, robe open, body bathed in soft light. No words were necessary. He knelt between her legs, worshiping her with his mouth until she was writhing, fingers tangled in his hair, coming with a low, satisfied moan. Then she pulled him up, stripping him quickly, and took him deep into her mouth. Slow, teasing, powerful. Khalil groaned her name like a curse and a blessing. They made it to the bed eventually. She rode him hard, chasing another release, using his body the way she used every tool at her disposal. Their coupling was fierce, almost angry, a celebration of her victory over betrayal, and a reminder of her own appetites. When they finished, spent and slick with sweat, Khalil held her close. "You handled smooth?" he asked. "Permanently," she confirmed. "The numbers are clean now, and the captain saw I won't hesitate." He kissed her forehead. "You're becoming exactly what this city needs. But be careful. Little Vic is talking more. Darius is pushing boundaries. The feds, I know the risk." She traced a finger down his chest. "That's why I have you, and why I watch everyone else." The affair with Khalil was becoming more than release. There was trust there, dangerous trust. But in the numbers, Lawanda had seen the truth of the empire. Loyalty was currency, and betrayal was death. She slept deeply that night, the city lights steady outside. Tomorrow, she would push harder, expand the legitimate fronts, tighten the illegal ones, prepare for whatever Darius or her brother threw at her next. The book's balance, so would the blood. Chapter 8, Old Flames, New Fire. The old flame walked back into Lawanda's life at the worst possible time, or the best. Marcus Mace Thompson had been her first real love at 19. Tall, golden brown skin, dreads he kept neatly twisted, and a voice like smoked honey that made women weak. Back then, he was a rising producer in the Atlanta music scene, moving between legitimate studio work and the family's underground connections for protection and financing. They had burned hot and reckless, stolen nights in Buckhead hotels, passionate arguments that ended in even more passionate sex, dreams of ruling the city together. Then Lawanda left for LA to build her own thing, and Mace had stayed, becoming a bigger name in the industry while keeping one foot in the streets. Word was he had gone mostly legit, but nobody ever fully left the game. He showed up at the Velvet Rope unannounced on a night when Lawanda was hosting a private event for key allies. Politicians, developers, a few music executives whose careers the family had quietly boosted. She spotted him across the main floor, leaning against the bar in a tailored black suit, watching the dancers with that same half smile that used to melt her. Their eyes locked. The years fell away. Lawanda excused herself from a conversation with a city councilman and crossed the floor. Mace straightened, pulling her into a hug that lingered just a second too long. "Damn, Lala," he murmured against her ear, using the old nickname. "You grew up fine as hell. Heard you back running things. Suits you." She pulled back, smiling despite herself. "And I heard you're the one making stars now. Still got that golden touch?" They slipped into a private booth. Conversation flowed easy at first, catching up on lost years, laughing about old crazy nights. But underneath, the heat was immediate. Mace's hand found her thigh under the table. Lawanda didn't move it away. Later, after the event wound down, they left together in his Maybach. The drive to his sprawling home in a gated community felt charged with memory and new possibility. Inside, the house was modern luxury. Studio in the basement, art on the walls, a bedroom with a view of the skyline. They barely made it through the door. Mace kissed her like a man reclaiming something he had lost, hands roaming her body with familiar confidence. Lawanda responded with equal fire, pushing his jacket off, unbuttoning his shirt to reveal the toned chest she remembered. Clothes hit the floor in a trail to the bedroom. He lifted her onto the king bed, mouth worshiping every inch, sucking her nipples until she arched, kissing down her stomach. spreading her thighs and devouring her with slow, deliberate strokes of his tongue. Lawanda cried out, hips bucking, fingers gripping his dreads. The pleasure was deeper because it was history. The boy who had taught her how good it could feel to let go, now a man who knew exactly how to push her buttons. She came hard, shaking, and then pulled him up to kiss her own taste off his lips. When he entered her, it was slow and deep, eyes locked. They moved together like they had never stopped, rhythmic, intense, building to a crescendo that left them both gasping. Afterward, tangled in sheets, the old fire mixed with new realities. "You really taking over for Vic?" Mace asked, tracing circles on her bare hip. Lawanda nodded, head on his chest. "It's mine now, or it will be, but there are complications. Darius circling, my brother testing me. The numbers had leaks I had to plug." Mace was quiet for a moment. "I can help with the music side. Legit revenue streams, clean money. But you know me getting close again, it brings eyes." She kissed his chest. "I need eyes on my side, and I need this." Her hand slid lower, stroking him back to life. They went again, slower this time, more intimate, bodies remembering every curve and rhythm. Lawanda rode him, taking control, using the pleasure to fuel her ambition. Old flames had a way of reigniting everything. The next days blurred business and passion. Mace introduced her to new artists and executives, opening doors for legitimate expansion. A record label front, production deals that could launder and grow money cleanly. Their nights were explosive, hotel suites, his studio after hours, even a risky quickie in the back of his car overlooking the city. The sex was addictive, raw, nostalgic, and laced with the danger of her position. Mace knew the streets. He understood the stakes, and he still looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. But new fire brought new threats. Darius sent another message, this one with flowers and a note. "Old friends can become enemies, new ones even faster. Let's talk again soon." Little Vic confronted her at the estate one afternoon, eyes blazing. First Khalil sniffing around. "Now, Mace, you building a harem or an empire?" "The captains are talking, saying you're distracted by dick instead of business." Lawanda slapped him hard enough to sting. "Watch your mouth. I'm handling business while you're posturing. Mace brings real money, real connections. You bring attitude. Which one do you think the family needs right now?" The tension between brother and sister was reaching a boiling point. Vic Sr. was recovering, but still weak. He urged calm from his hospital bed, but Lawanda knew the power vacuum wouldn't wait. One night with Mace turned particularly intense. After a long day of meetings, they met at the penthouse. The encounter started tender, but quickly turned fierce. Him bending her over the balcony railing, high enough for privacy, taking her from behind while the city lights sparkled below. Lawanda's moans carried on the wind as she pushed back against him, chasing release after release. They moved inside, christening every surface, lost in each other until dawn. In the afterglow, Mace held her. "I still love you, you know. Always have. Whatever you need, muscle, money, me, I'm here." Lawanda kissed him deeply, but her mind was already calculating. Old flames could warm the heart. They could also burn the house down. Chapter 9. The Hit. The hit came without warning on a humid Atlanta evening that still carried the scent of recent rain. Lawanda was leaving a late meeting at one of the family's smaller clubs on the South Side, a low-key spot used more for business than dancing. She had Big T and two other men with her, standard security. The discussion had gone well. Tightening routes, preparing for Darius's next move, solidifying captains after Smooth's removal. They stepped out into the parking lot. The streetlights buzzed overhead. Then the world exploded with gunfire. Automatic weapons barked from a black SUV that screeched around the corner. Bullets shattered glass, pinged off metal. Big T shoved Lawanda behind their armored Escalade, returning fire with precise, deadly shots. One of the guards went down with a grunt. Lawanda's heart hammered as she pulled her own Glock, firing back over the hood. 2 shots that found a target in the attacking vehicle. Tires squealed. The SUV peeled off into the night, leaving chaos behind. Big T was bleeding from a graze on his arm, but alive. The downed guard was hit bad in the chest. Lawanda applied pressure, voice steady even as rage boiled inside her. "Call the doc. Get him to the safe house, now." Sirens wailed in the distance. They were gone before police arrived. Back at the estate, the mood was warlike. Lawanda paced the study, still in her blood-spattered blouse, while doctors tended Big T Vic Sr. had been moved home earlier that day and watched from a chair, face grim. "They came for me," Lawanda said. "Not a warning, a hit." Darius was the obvious suspect, but something felt personal. The timing, the location, someone inside had given details. Little Vic burst in, eyes wild. "This is what happens when you push too hard. Darius is retaliating for the warehouse. We need to hit back big." "Shut up," Lawanda snapped. "This wasn't just Darius. The route we took was last minute. Only a handful of people knew. One of them talked." The room went silent. Accusations hung heavy. Vic Sr. spoke, voice weak but commanding. "Find the rat, handle it, then send Darius a message he'll never forget." Lawanda did exactly that. She spent the night pulling threads, calls, quiet interrogations, security footage from nearby cameras. By dawn, the traitor was identified. One of the lower captains who had been at the meeting with Smooth, a man with gambling debts and new money from an unknown source. The hit on him was swift. Lawanda didn't do it herself, but she gave the order. Big T, patched up and furious, handled the details. The man's body was left in a place Darius's crew would find it, with a clear message carved into the warning, "Kings don't break." Lawanda needed to clear her head after the violence. She went to Mace that afternoon. He took one look at her, the exhaustion, the fire in her eyes, and pulled her inside without questions. Their sex that day was cathartic, almost healing. In his studio, surrounded by music equipment, he bent her over the mixing board, taking her from behind with deep, grounding strokes. Lawanda gripped the edge, moaning as he filled her, each thrust pushing away the memory of bullets and blood. She came hard, then turned and dropped to her knees, taking him in her mouth until he lost control. Later in his bed, slow and tender, they talked strategy between kisses. "You're in deep now," Mace said, fingers in her hair. "This life, it doesn't let go." "I don't want it to," she replied, straddling him again. "I was born for it." The passion reignited old flames and forged new resolve. Mace promised more resources, artists who could front legitimate businesses, connections that could insulate the family from heat. But the hit had changed things. Lawanda was no longer just stepping into the role. She was the target, and targets fought back harder. The retaliation against Darius was calculated. Not all-out war, not yet, but surgical strikes. One of his clubs got hit with a health code violation that shut it down temporarily thanks to political connections. A shipment of his product was intercepted and lost. Lawanda sent a direct message through intermediaries. Next time, it's personal. Little Vic was brought to heel after another confrontation, though resentment simmered. Vic Sr. grew stronger daily, but he made it clear Lawanda was the future. In the quiet moments, Lawanda reflected on the cost. The power was intoxicating. The sex, with Khalil's loyalty and Mace's history, grounded her. But the violence reminded her of her father's words. The streets don't love nobody. She would make them fear her instead. Chapter 10. Power Plays. With the traitor handled and Darius on the defensive, Lawanda moved like a force of nature through the family empire. Power plays were her specialty now, the delicate art of rewarding loyalty and crushing doubt. She started with the captains. One by one, she met them in private settings. The velvet ropes back rooms, the estate study, even a few high-end Buckhead restaurants where deals looked like lunches. To the loyal, she offered more. Bigger cuts, new responsibilities, public recognition of their value. To the fence-sitters and Little Vic's quiet supporters, she offered choices. Most chose wisely. One holdout, an older lieutenant named Graves, who had run protection rackets for her father for decades, challenged her openly in a group meeting. A woman at the top? Vic must be slipping, he grumbled. This ain't no beauty contest. Lawanda smiled, slow and sharp. She walked around the table until she stood behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. The room held its breath. Beauty has its place, she said, softly. But brains and balls win wars. You've served my father well. Serve me, and you retire rich. Test me, and you retire early. Graves met her eyes. Whatever he saw there made him nod. Yes, ma'am. One by one, they bent. Little Vic watched from the sidelines, simmering but silent for now. Vic Sr. nodded approval from his recovery chair. The empire was consolidating under her hand. The legitimate side grew stronger, too. With Mace's connections, Lawanda launched a new music management arm, signing talent, producing tracks, funneling clean money through tours and merch. Construction contracts for city projects expanded. Nightclub revenues hit record highs as Atlanta celebrated its recovery from the storms. But power wasn't just business, it was presence. Lawanda made herself visible. She hosted a lavish party at the estate. Glittering chandeliers, top shelf everything, beautiful people from every world the Kings touched. Politicians mingled with rappers. Developers whispered with enforcers. Lawanda moved through the crowd in a stunning emerald gown that hugged her curves and plunged low in the back, drawing every eye. Khalil was there, watchful and professional in public. Mace attended as a business partner, their shared history simmering beneath polite smiles. The tension between her two lovers added an electric charge to the night. Later, after most guests had gone, Lawanda stole moments with both. First, Khalil in a guest suite, quick, intense, against the wall, her dress hiked up as he drove into her with loyal urgency. "You're owning them," he growled. "All of them." Then Mace, in the garden under string lights, a slower seduction on a private lounge chair. His mouth and hands explored her like rediscovering treasure, bringing her to shuddering release before she took control, riding him until they both collapsed in satisfaction. Two men, two different kinds of fire, both useful, both dangerous. Darius tried one more power play, a public show of force at a neutral club, flexing his crew. Lawanda countered by showing up with twice the presence and a smile that promised consequences. No violence broke out, but the message was clear. The Kings were stronger than ever. Little Vic finally bent the knee in a private conversation with their father present. "I see it now," he admitted grudgingly. "You got the vision, just don't forget family." Lawanda hugged him, brief, genuine. "We're blood. That's why I'm giving you a bigger role. Prove you deserve it." Vic Sr. watched with pride. His daughter was becoming the leader he always knew she could be. In the quiet after the storm of consolidation, Lawanda stood on the estate balcony again, city lights steady below. The power was hers. The plays had worked, but she knew the biggest tests were still ahead. Chapter 11. The Rival. Darius Washington finally demanded a face-to-face on his terms, a neutral high-end lounge in Midtown Atlanta away from King's strongholds. Lawanda agreed, but arrived with overwhelming presence, Big T, two captains, and Khalil for security. She wore a white power suit that contrasted her deep skin beautifully. Tailored jacket open just enough to show cleavage, pants hugging her hips and ass, heels that clicked with authority. Darius was already there, looking every bit the rising king in a custom black suit. His eyes lit up when he saw her, a mix of lust and calculation. "Lawanda," he said, standing to greet her with a hand kiss that lingered. "You get more dangerous every time I see you." She pulled her hand back smoothly. "Flattery won't get you territory, Darius. Sit." The meeting was a dance of power and seduction. They negotiated over expensive whiskey, borders, percentages, mutual respect. Darius pushed hard, eyes roaming her body openly. Lawanda countered with steel and charm, crossing her legs slowly, using every weapon in her arsenal. "You and me," he said at one point, voice low so only she could hear. "We could merge empires, rule this city like royalty. Imagine the nights." The tension crackled. There was undeniable chemistry, the pull of two ambitious predators. For a moment, Lawanda let herself feel it, leaning closer, lips inches from his ear. "I rule alone," she whispered. "And if you come after my family again, I'll bury you myself." Darius chuckled, but his eyes darkened with respect and desire. The meeting ended in a tense truce, but both knew it was temporary. That night, the encounter fueled something primal in Lawanda. She went to Mace, needing to exorcise the rival's pull. Their sex was explosive, him taking her with possessive intensity, as if marking his claim. Lawanda matched him, riding the edge of danger and power until release left her breathless. Khalil later got a different side. Tender but fierce loyalty reaffirmed in slow, deep connection. The rival had lit a fire. Lawanda would use it to burn brighter. Chapter 12. Loss and Fire. The loss came like a knife in the dark, swift and unforgiving, tearing through the fragile sense of control Lawanda had built since returning to Atlanta. It was 2 nights after the tense sit-down with Darius Washington. The city had finally settled into a rhythm after the storms, power fully restored, streets buzzing again with nightlife and ambition. Lawanda had allowed herself a rare, quiet evening. A private dinner at one of the family's discreet Italian spots in Midtown, the kind of place where politicians and underworld figures broke bread without fear of cameras. Big T had been at her side the entire time, his massive frame a constant reassuring shadow. He had survived the previous attempt on her life with nothing more than a graze, and his loyalty felt unbreakable. They stepped out of the restaurant, laughing about an old story Vic Sr. had told at dinner earlier that week. The humid Atlanta night wrapped around them like a lover's embrace. Lawanda was dressed down for once. Dark jeans that hugged her curves, a silk blouse unbuttoned just enough to catch the eye, heels that clicked authoritatively on the pavement. Big T opened the door of the armored Escalade for her. Then the world exploded. A black SUV with tinted windows roared around the corner, windows down, automatic gunfire, ripping through the quiet street. Bullets shattered glass, pinged off metal, and found flesh. Big T reacted instantly, his body a shield as he shoved Lawanda hard into the back seat. "Get down!" he roared, drawing his weapon and returning fire with the precision of a man who had done this too many times. Lawanda hit the floor of the SUV, Glock already in her hand. She fired back through the open door, 2 shots that found their mark in the attacking vehicle. One of the other guards went down with a grunt, hit in the leg. Big T kept shooting, dropping at least 2 assailants before a round caught him square in the chest. He staggered but stayed on his feet long enough to empty his clip into the SUV. The attackers peeled off into the night, tires screeching, leaving blood and chaos behind. "Big T!" Lawanda screamed, scrambling out to him. She caught his massive body as he collapsed, lowering him to the ground. Blood poured from the wound in his chest, soaking her silk blouse, her hands, the pavement. His eyes, usually so steady, were wide with shock and pain. "Boss, protect the throne," he gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. "You, the queen now." Lawanda pressed her hands to the wound, tears streaming down her face for the first time since she had returned to Atlanta. "Don't you dare die on me, T. Stay with me. Drive. Get us to the safe house doctor now." The surviving guard floored it, sirens already wailing in the distance. In the back, Lawanda held Big T's head in her lap, rocking him, whispering promises and memories. "You taught me how to shoot. You carried me home when I was 12 and twisted my ankle playing in the yard. You've been my shadow since day one. Fight, damn it, fight for me. But Big T's eyes fluttered closed before they reached the safe house. The doctor, a discreet family asset on call 24/7, confirmed what Lawanda already knew in her gut. He was gone. She screamed then, not a delicate sob, but a raw, guttural cry of rage and grief that echoed through the reinforced walls of the safe house. Big T had been more than security, he was family. The one constant when her mother died, when her father sent her away to school, when she returned to claim her birthright. His death wasn't just a loss, it was a declaration of war. Vic Sr. was home from the hospital by then, still weak but sharp as ever. When Lawanda walked into the estate study covered in Big T's blood, her father's face crumpled. The old king, the man who had built an empire from nothing, wept openly for the first time in years. He was my right hand, Vic rasped, gripping her hand. Loyal to the bone, this was Darius, or someone close to him testing you. Little Vic paced the room, fists clenched. We burn their shit down tonight. All of it. No more talks. No more truces. Lawanda stood at the center of the storm, eyes dry now, heart turned to steel. No, we do this smart. Darius wants chaos. We give him precision. Find out who talked, who set this up. Then we make them pay in ways that send a message to every crew in Atlanta. The investigation was relentless. Lawanda barely slept. She pulled phone records, security footage from surrounding businesses, shook down informants with cash and threats. Khalil and Mace both offered resources. Khalil's street network, Mace's connections in the music world where rumors flowed like champagne. By the next afternoon, they had the traitor, a mid-level captain named Reeves who had been feeding Darius information for months, motivated by gambling debts and promises of a bigger cut in a new order. Lawanda handled the interrogation personally in a soundproof basement room at one of the family warehouses. Reeves was tied to a chair, sweating under the harsh light. She circled him slowly, the same way she had moved through boardrooms and clubs. You sold out Big T, she said, voice low and deadly. You sold out my family for what? Pennies from Darius? Reeves begged, cried, offered information. It didn't matter. Lawanda gave the order. His body was left where Darius's crew would find it. A clear, brutal message carved into the scene. Kings bleed together. Kings avenge together. The retaliation was swift and multi-pronged. Darius's clubs were hit with coordinated raids, some by paid-off police, others by King's soldiers in the chaos. Shipments disappeared. Lieutenants vanished or turned up beaten and broken with warnings. One of Darius's key warehouses went up in flames, the fire lighting up the Atlanta night like a beacon of the new order. Throughout it all, Lawanda felt the fire consuming her. Grief fueled every decision. She visited Big T's family personally, ensuring they were taken care of for life. At his private funeral, a small, intense gathering at the estate, she spoke with a voice that carried the weight of the empire. Big T died protecting what we built, she told the gathered loyalists, her black dress elegant but severe. His blood is on my hands, and I will wash it in the blood of our enemies. The kings do not break. We rise. The room responded with nods and raised glasses. Even little Vic seemed subdued, offering a rare moment of unity. In the days that followed, Lawanda sought release in the only ways that reminded her she was still human, still a woman with desires amid the violence. Mace came to her first, sensing the storm inside. In his studio, surrounded by the smell of weed and music equipment, he pulled her into his arms. Their sex was raw, grief-stricken, almost violent in its intensity. He bent her over the mixing board, hands gripping her hips as he took her from behind, with deep, punishing strokes. Lawanda pushed back against him, moaning loudly, using the pleasure to drown out the memory of Big T's blood on her hands. She came with a cry that echoed through the room, then turned and dropped to her knees, taking him deep into her mouth until he lost control, filling her with the kind of release that bordered on absolution. Later that night, Khalil provided a different anchor. In the estate's master suite, their encounter was slower, more intimate. He held her close, kissing every inch of her body as if memorizing it, bringing her to shuddering climax after climax, with his mouth and fingers before entering her. They moved together in the candlelight, bodies slick, eyes locked. "You're not alone," he whispered as she rode him. "I'm here, always." Lawanda shattered around him, tears mixing with sweat for the second time since the loss. The affairs grounded her, but the fire hardened her. She was no longer the daughter returning home. She was the avenging queen, forged in loss. Vic Sr. pulled her aside one evening as he continued to recover. "Your mother would be proud," he said. "She had that same fire. Use it, but don't let it consume you completely. An empire needs a head that thinks as well as it burns." Little Vic, too, showed a shift. The death of Big T seemed to shake something loose in him. "I was wrong to doubt you," he admitted in a rare, vulnerable moment. "Tell me what you need. I'm with you." Lawanda hugged her brother, brief but genuine. Blood was blood. The family was uniting in the face of the enemy. But Darius wasn't done. Whispers came back. He was gathering forces, calling in favors from out-of-town crews. The war was escalating. Lawanda stood on the balcony again one night, the city lights steady below her. Big T's absence was a hole in her shadow, but it fueled her. The loss had burned away doubt. The fire had made her unstoppable. Atlanta would learn what happened when you took from a king, and Lawanda would make sure the lesson lasted generations. Chapter 13. The Deal. The city was holding its breath in the aftermath of Big T's death and the wave of calculated violence that followed. Atlanta's underworld had seen its share of power shifts, but Lawanda King's response had sent shockwaves through every crew, club, and corner. Whispers traveled faster than the summer storms. The daughter had become the queen, and she was not to be tested lightly. Yet Lawanda knew fragile truces were often more dangerous than open war. The deal she was about to orchestrate would either cement her place at the top or ignite a conflict that could burn the entire empire to the ground. The meeting was set for neutral ground, the private rooftop lounge of the newly opened Meridian Tower Hotel in downtown Atlanta. It was the kind of venue where billion-dollar real estate developments were born, where politicians shook hands with developers over crystal glasses, and where the line between legitimate business and the underworld blurred into something profitable for everyone involved. Lawanda had chosen it deliberately. The venue's security, its skyline views, and its reputation for discretion gave her the home field advantage without being on king turf. She arrived an hour early with a carefully selected team. Khalil was at her side for close protection, his presence both professional and intimately reassuring after their deepening connection. Two battle-tested captains flanked them, men who had proven their loyalty in the blood-soaked days following Big T's murder. A pair of sharp family lawyers completed the group, carrying briefcases filled with contracts that could make the most illegal agreements appear ironclad on paper. Lawanda herself was a vision of calculated power and sensuality. She wore a striking red dress that clung to every curve of her body like it had been poured on, the neckline plunging just enough to command attention without desperation, the fabric hugging her full breasts, narrow waist, and the generous swell of her hips and ass. Her deep mahogany skin glowed under the soft lighting, her hair swept up in an elegant chignon that exposed the graceful line of her neck, gold hoops and a statement necklace catching the city lights. Her red bottom heels clicked with authority on the polished floors. She looked every inch the queen, ready to negotiate from a position of unassailable strength. The rooftop lounge was breathtaking. Glass railings offered panoramic views of the glittering Atlanta skyline, the lights of Buckhead in the distance, the illuminated dome of the Capitol, and the pulsing energy of the city that never truly slept. Private cabanas with plush seating surrounded a sleek bar staffed by discreet attendants. Lawanda's team secured the perimeter and swept for listening devices before she settled into the prime cabana overlooking the city. A bottle of vintage champagne was already chilling. She poured herself a glass, the bubbles rising like her ambitions, and waited. Darius Washington arrived fashionably late, as expected. His black SUV pulled up, and he emerged flanked by 4 men, though only 2 accompanied him to the lounge, per the agreed terms. He was dressed impeccably in a custom black suit that accentuated his athletic build, gold accents flashing at his cuffs and neck. The bruises and strain from Lawanda's retaliatory strikes were visible in the slight stiffness of his gait and the hardness around his eyes. But his smile when he saw her was predatory and appreciative. "Lawanda King," he drawled, approaching the table with that smooth confidence that made lesser men nervous. He took her hand, brushing his lips across her knuckles in a gesture that lingered a beat too long. His eyes roamed openly over her body, taking in the way the red dress accentuated her curves. "You get more dangerous, more beautiful every time I see you. Red suits the Queen of Atlanta." Lawanda withdrew her hand smoothly, her smile cool and sharp. "Flattery is cheap, Darius. Sit. We're here to talk business, not exchange compliments. Or have you forgotten what happened to your warehouse and your lieutenant?" The air thickened immediately. Darius chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes as he took the seat across from her. His men positioned themselves discreetly while her team did the same. The lawyers laid out folders on the low table between them. Champagne was poured, but neither touched theirs immediately. The negotiation began in earnest. It was a complex dance of territory, revenue streams, and mutual survival. Lawanda laid out her demands first, a clear division of key construction projects in the post-storm recovery boom, joint but controlled access to certain airport routes for product movement, and a strict ceasefire on direct actions against King family personnel and assets. In return, she offered Darius limited expansion into peripheral neighborhoods and a cut of some legitimate entertainment ventures Mace had helped set up. Darius pushed back hard, his voice low and intense. "You come in here after hitting my shit hard, expecting me to roll over? I've got alliances outside the city now, crews that make your father's old guard look like amateurs. You want peace? Give me more than scraps." Lawanda leaned forward, the movement deliberately drawing his gaze to her cleavage. She used every tool, beauty, intellect, the memory of Big T's blood on her hands, to press her advantage. "Alliances can crumble, Darius, just like your operations did. I buried a man who was like an uncle to me because of you. Don't mistake my willingness to talk for weakness. This deal gives you survival with dignity. Refuse it, and the fire that took your warehouse will consume everything you've built." Hours passed. Bottles were emptied and replaced. Voices rose and fell. Lawyers scribbled notes and revised clauses. At one point, with their team stepping back for a private sidebar, Darius leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne. The chemistry between them was undeniable. 2 ambitious predators circling the same prey. "You know this doesn't have to be endless war," he murmured, his knee brushing hers under the table. "You and me together, the brains, the beauty, the ruthlessness, we could rule this city like no one ever has. Imagine the power. The nights after sealing deals like this one, your body against mine, celebrating victories that make legends." Lawanda felt the pull, the raw, dangerous attraction of a man who matched her drive. For a split second, the fantasy flashed. A merger of empires, bodies entwined in victory, the kind of passionate alliance that could dominate Atlanta. She let her lips curve into a seductive smile, leaning closer until their faces were inches apart. "I don't share thrones, Darius," she whispered, her breath warm against his ear. "And I don't sleep with men whose bullets killed my family. Make the deal, or the next red you see won't be my dress." The tension crackled like electricity. Darius's eyes darkened with a mix of desire, respect, and frustration. He laughed softly, but the negotiation resumed with new urgency. They haggled deep into the night. Lawanda conceded minor points to sweeten the pot, a shared interest in a new music-related venture through Mace's connections, limited protection for some of Darius's lower-level operations. Darius gave ground on the major construction bids and agreed to a verifiable ceasefire. The lawyers drafted and redrafted until the documents were signed in duplicate, each side keeping copies that could be used as both shield and sword if the truce broke. When it was done, both leaders stood. Darius offered his hand. Lawanda took it, their grip firm, eyes locked in mutual understanding. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "But for now, respect." "Respect," she replied. "And remember what happens when it's lost." Darius and his men departed. Lawanda stayed on the rooftop a while longer, staring out at the city she was fighting to own completely. The deal had bought time, breathing room, and strategic gains. But she knew fragile paper agreements meant nothing without the will and the muscle to enforce them. She celebrated the deal the only way that truly reminded her she was alive amid the constant threats. Mace was waiting for her at the private penthouse when she finally left the hotel. He took one look at the fire in her eyes and the triumph in her posture and pulled her inside without a word. Their sex was a victory lap, celebratory, intense, and deeply satisfying. In the luxurious bedroom with its skyline view, Mace stripped her out of the red dress slowly, worshiping every inch of skin he revealed. His mouth found her breasts, sucking and teasing her dark nipples until she arched against him, moaning. He dropped to his knees, spreading her thighs and devouring her with his tongue, fingers curling inside her, in that perfect rhythm he knew so well. Lawanda came hard against his face, fingers tangled in his hair, the release washing away the stress of hours of negotiation. She returned the favor, pushing him onto the bed and taking him deep into her mouth, her full lips and skilled tongue bringing him to the edge before she climbed on top, riding him with triumphant energy, hips rolling in powerful circles. She took what she needed. Mace gripped her ass, thrusting up to meet her, their bodies slapping together in a rhythm that matched the pulsing city below. They came together in a shattering climax, Lawanda crying out as waves of pleasure coursed through her. Later, tangled in the sheets, they talked strategy between lazy kisses. Mace's connections would help solidify the legitimate side of the New Deal. His support was more than physical. It was strategic. Khalil arrived in the early morning hours for his own moment. Their connection was different, quieter, grounded in deep loyalty. In the soft pre-dawn light, he held her close, their lovemaking slow and intense. He moved inside her with deliberate strokes, eyes locked, whispering affirmations of her strength. Lawanda shattered around him multiple times, the emotional and physical release leaving her renewed. The deal had been made. The power plays had led here. Now Lawanda had to hold what she had claimed and prepare for the inevitable next challenge. The Queen of Atlanta was ready. Chapter 14, The Reckoning. The reckoning arrived on a night when Atlanta felt like it was holding its breath once more, the air thick with humidity and the promise of violence. The fragile deal with Darius Washington had held for several tense weeks, but everyone in the game knew it was paper thin. A temporary ceasefire in a war that had already claimed Big T and too many others. Lawanda King had used every single day of that uneasy peace like a master strategist. She strengthened alliances with key captains, cleaned up lingering discrepancies in the books with ruthless efficiency, solidified her leadership through private meetings and public displays of strength, and prepared contingency plans for the inevitable betrayal. Vic Sr. was growing stronger by the day, walking the sprawling Buckhead estate grounds with a cane, but with the old calculating fire returning to his eyes. Little Vic had stepped up noticeably, handling street-level operations with a discipline he had rarely shown before, as if Big T's death had finally forged something harder in him. Mace and Khalil remained her dual anchors in the storm, one offering the heat of history and creative revenue streams through the music world, the other providing steadfast loyalty and street-level muscle. Their presence in her bed and in her life kept her grounded even as the pressure mounted. But Darius Washington was a predator who had never learned how to stay caged. The first clear sign of the breaking point came through a panicked late-night call from one of the family captains, one of the King family's key construction sites on the west side, a major post-storm recovery project worth millions in legitimate and laundered revenue, had been hit hard. Sabotage on a professional level. Heavy equipment destroyed with precision cuts, workers threatened at gunpoint and scared off, valuable materials stolen or ruined. It bore Darius's signature all over it. Not an all-out declaration of war that would shatter the truce openly, but a calculated probe designed to test Lawanda's resolve and expose any weakness in her leadership. She didn't panic. She called an emergency meeting at the estate war room within the hour. The large oak table was covered with maps, phone records, security footage stills, and half-empty glasses of whiskey. Vic Sr. presided from his high-back chair, still recovering but commanding respect. Little Vic paced like a caged animal. The captains sat tense, waiting for her word. "This is him probing," Lawanda said, her voice pure steel as she stood at the head of the table in a fitted black jumpsuit that hugged her powerful frame. Her hair was pulled back severely, gold hoops her only adornment. "He wants us to overreact, break the truce first, and give him the justification to bring in those out-of-town allies he's been bragging about. We don't give him that satisfaction. We hit smart, surgical, and we make it hurt where it counts most: his money, his reputation, and his ego." The plan she laid out was multi-layered and meticulously timed. Khalil would lead a coordinated team to disrupt one of Darius's quieter money laundering fronts, a chain of seemingly legitimate car washes on the south side that moved serious cash. Mace would use his growing influence in the music and entertainment industry to pull strings that quietly froze some of Darius's legitimate revenue streams. Canceled appearances, frozen accounts, scared off investors. Lawanda herself would oversee the most personal and humiliating strike, a raid on a private high rollers party Darius was hosting at one of his few remaining clubs. The goal wasn't mass casualties, but maximum embarrassment and disruption. Security overwhelmed, products seized in front of influential guests, the message sent that nowhere was safe. The operations launched simultaneously just after midnight. Lawanda waited at the estate, pacing the study with a glass of red wine in her hand, her body humming with adrenaline and the weight of leadership. Reports filtered in over secure lines. Khalil's team succeeded with minimal resistance. Mace's moves created immediate financial pressure. The club raid went down perfectly. Chaos in the VIP rooms, high-profile guests fleeing into the night. Product carted off in vans while Darius's men were left humiliated. When the final confirmation came through, all objectives met, no major losses on the King's side. Lawanda allowed herself a small, victorious smile that didn't reach her eyes. The fire of vengeance for Big T still burned hot. But the real reckoning was deeply personal and still to come. Darius called her directly on a burner phone in the pre-dawn hours. His voice was barely contained fury. You broke the deal, Lawanda, after everything. You tested it first, she replied, her tone ice cold and controlled. Big T's blood is still fresh in my memory. Consider everything that happened tonight interest on the debt you owe this family. He laughed bitterly on the other end of the line. You think you're untouchable now? I've got people who make your little crew look like amateurs. This ends with you on your knees begging or in a grave next to your precious Big T. Lawanda's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that carried the weight of every lesson her father had taught her. Come try it, Darius. I'll be waiting with open arms, and when I'm done, there won't be enough left of your empire to bury. The line went dead. The war was fully ignited. The final confrontation erupted 2 nights later at an abandoned industrial warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a location chosen for its isolation, its symbolism as neutral killing ground, and the fact that both sides knew it well from past dealings. Darius brought a small army, determined to end the king threat once and for all. Lawanda matched him man for man, with Khalil, Little Vic, and her most trusted captains at the forefront. The air was thick with tension as the two leaders faced each other in the center of the vast, dimly lit space. Headlights from the surrounding vehicles cutting through the shadows like spotlights on a stage. Words were few at first. Accusations flew back and forth, betrayal, ambition, the death of Big T. Darius sneered about Lawanda's pretty face trying to play a man's game. Lawanda reminded him exactly whose blood ran in her veins and what she had already taken from him. Then the shooting started. It was pure chaos. Gunfire echoed off the concrete walls like thunder, men shouting orders and curses, bodies dropping in the flickering light. Lawanda fired her Glock with cold, precise fury, dropping one of Darius's advancing men who came too close to her position. Khalil fought like a demon at her side, protecting her fiercely while taking down threats with ruthless efficiency. Little Vic proved himself in the fire, taking down 2 attackers in close combat and earning the respect of the men around him. The warehouse became a battlefield of muzzle flashes, ricocheting bullets, and the metallic smell of blood. In the heart of the melee, Lawanda and Darius came face to face again amid the smoke and shadows. For a suspended moment, time seemed to slow. Darius raised his weapon, eyes blazing with hatred and that lingering, dangerous desire. Lawanda was faster. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around with the impact. He staggered but didn't fall, blood soaking through his expensive shirt. "This isn't over," he gasped, clutching the wound, hatred burning in his gaze. Lawanda stood over him, gun steady, the red of her tactical top now stained with the night's violence. "It is for you tonight," she said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. She didn't kill him, a calculated act of mercy that would spread through the streets as either weakness or supreme confidence, depending on who controlled the narrative. Instead, she left him alive with a final, chilling warning and his remaining empire in ruins around him. Her men secured the scene, rounding up survivors and ensuring the message would carry far beyond this warehouse. The reckoning was complete. Darius's crew was shattered. His out-of-town allies pulled back when they saw the cost. The kings stood dominant once more, bloodied but unbowed. Lawanda returned to the family estate victorious, but bone-deep exhausted, the weight of leadership and loss heavy on her shoulders. The doctors checked her for injuries, minor cuts and bruises only, while the household moved with quiet efficiency around the aftermath. Vic Sr. embraced her fiercely when she walked into the main room, pride shining in his eyes. "You did what I couldn't have done better," he told her. Little Vic offered a nod of genuine respect, the rivalry between them finally tempered by shared survival. But Lawanda needed more than victory speeches and family approval. She needed release. She needed to feel alive in the most primal way after dancing with death. Mace arrived first, summoned by a single text. He took one look at the fire still burning in her eyes, the bloodstains on her clothes, and the triumphant set of her shoulders, and pulled her into his arms without a word. They barely made it to the master's suite. The door had hardly closed before he was stripping her out of the tactical gear, his mouth claiming hers in a kiss that was all hunger and relief. His hands roamed her body possessively, cupping her full breasts, thumbs teasing her dark nipples until they hardened under his touch, sliding down her toned stomach to the wetness between her thighs. Lawanda moaned into his mouth, fingers digging into his shoulders as he dropped to his knees and buried his face between her legs. His tongue worked her with expert, relentless skill. Long strokes, focused flicks on her most sensitive spot, fingers curling inside her in that perfect rhythm he had perfected over years. She came hard and fast against his mouth, thighs trembling around his head, a raw cry escaping her lips as the tension of the night shattered. She didn't let him stop. Pushing him back onto the massive bed, she stripped him quickly and climbed on top, sinking down onto his hard length in one smooth, deep motion. The feeling of him filling her completely drew a guttural moan from both of them. She rode him with fierce, triumphant energy, hips rolling in powerful circles, breasts bouncing with every movement, hands planted on his chest for leverage. Mace gripped her ass hard, thrusting up to meet her, their bodies slapping together in a rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. Sweat glistened on their skin. The city lights from the windows cast them in a dramatic glow as Lawanda chased another peak, her moans growing louder and more desperate. "Fuck, Lawanda!" Mace groaned, his voice rough with pleasure. "You're a goddess, a queen. Take it all." She did. The orgasm hit her like a wave, crashing through her body as she clenched around him, back arching, nails raking down his chest. Mace followed moments later, spilling deep inside her with a shout, their bodies locked together in shared release. They weren't done. After a brief rest tangled in the sheets, he took her again, this time from behind, bent over the edge of the bed, his thrust deep and possessive. Lawanda pushed back against him, meeting every stroke. Another intense climax, building until they both shattered once more. The sex was cathartic, victorious, a celebration of survival and power. By the time they collapsed, exhausted and sated, the first light of dawn was creeping through the windows. Khalil arrived shortly after, sensing the need for his own brand of comfort. Their connection was different, slower, more emotionally charged. In the soft morning light, he held her close, kissing her with reverence as he moved inside her. Their lovemaking was intense in its intimacy, eyes locked, bodies moving as one until Lawanda came apart in his arms again, tears of release mixing with sweat. He followed, whispering affirmations of her strength and his unwavering loyalty. The reckoning had come, and Lawanda King had not only survived, she had conquered. The fire of loss had forged her into something unbreakable. Atlanta was hers. The empire was secure. New challenges would come, as they always did, but she would face them as the undisputed queen. For the first time since returning home, Lawanda slept deeply, wrapped in the afterglow of victory and passion, ready for whatever new chances the city would bring. Chapter 15. New Chances. The dawn after the reckoning broke clear and bright over Atlanta, as if the city itself was acknowledging a new order. Lawanda King stood on the master balcony of the Buckhead estate, a silk robe draped over her body, the morning breeze carrying the scent of fresh rain and possibility. The skyline stretched before her, the gleaming towers of downtown, the vibrant pulse of Buckhead, the neighborhoods where her father had built an empire from nothing and where she had now claimed it fully as her own. Big T's absence was still a sharp ache, but it had become fuel rather than a wound. Darius was broken, his crew scattered, his threats reduced to whispers. The family was united, the captains followed her without question. Vic Sr. watched her with open pride. Little Vic had earned his place at her side, Mace and Khalil remained her chosen confidants and lovers, each bringing different strengths to her reign. She had done it. The daughter had become the queen. In the weeks that followed, Lawanda moved with the confidence of a woman who had stared down death and emerged stronger. New legitimate ventures flourished, expanded music labels through Mace's connections, major construction contracts secured in the ongoing city recovery, nightclubs thriving under tighter, smarter management. The illegal streams flowed smoother than ever, protected by loyalty earned in blood. Political connections deepened. Rivals who had once circled like vultures now kept their distance or sought alliances on her terms. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson, Lawanda hosted a private celebration at the Velvet Rope. The club pulsed with life, dancers on stage moving with sensual grace, influential guests mingling, champagne flowing freely. She moved through the crowd like royalty, the red dress from the night of the deal, now a symbol of her triumph. Vic Sr. sat in a place of honor, toasting to the future. Little Vic laughed with the captains. Mace and Khalil were both present, their eyes on her with a mix of desire and respect that made her feel truly powerful. Later, in the owner's private lounge, she reflected on the journey. From the call in L.A. that had pulled her back through the storms literal and figurative, the betrayals, the losses, the passionate nights that kept her human, to this moment of dominance. Her father joined her briefly. "You've surpassed me," Vic said, voice thick with emotion. "The King name is stronger because of you. New chances, baby girl. Take them all." Lawanda hugged him tightly. "We built this together, and we'll keep building." That night, she allowed herself full release with both men in turn. Intense, loving, victorious encounters that celebrated survival and power. With Mace, it was fiery and nostalgic. With Khalil, it was deep and anchoring. She emerged renewed. Atlanta belonged to her now. The streets had tested her and she had won. But as she stood once more on the balcony watching the city lights, Lawanda smiled into the night. The story wasn't over. It was only beginning. New chances awaited. Lawanda's phone buzzed with a warning from an unknown number, disrupting her quiet certainty.
We all take chances, ain't nobody born brave. Sometimes you gotta walk through fire just to find your way. Had to take the city by storm, no permission, no reward, 'cause you only get to keep what you fought for. What to me, bright lights shining, I can see tomorrow calling me. Every dream I ever held is dancing in the midnight scene. But day night brings the memories, the scars I couldn't hide. So I let the rain keep falling, washing every tear I cried. I won't run from the pressure. Every scar made me better. If the mountain gets higher, I'll climb it forever. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. That's the price we pay when we're reaching for more. We all take chances, hearts beating through the storm. If I fall, I'll rise again, stronger than before. Oh, let it rain, let it pour, wash away the pain. Turn my losses into lessons that'll never be in vain. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. I'm gonna bet on me every time. That's what I'm living for. Dark nights taught me things the sunlight never could. Found my strength inside the places nobody understood. tear became a river, every river found a sea. Now I know my destiny was always calling me. Got the bigger the risk, bigger the reward. Every battle made me stronger than I was before. We all take chances, that's what faith is for. So I'm walking through the fire with my head held toward the stars. Bright lights to life, I can finally see the future was on sight. It was always meant to be. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. And I'll keep taking chances until the one remembers me.